Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Whitfield Report for 2020. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the Season 5 premiere. I want to thank you all for joining me so much. We have a great podcast ahead. Today's episode is going to be a fun one to kick off the new year. I have some announcements to make regarding the future of this podcast, and then I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of the new Star Wars movie, The Rise of Skywalker, which I have some definite thoughts about that. And then I'm also going to be doing a fun review of The Mandalorian, which is the Disney Plus series. I've reviewed that before on previous podcasts, but I'm going to be going over the whole series, not individually by episode, because that will take a long time. Although, if you guys want me to do an episode like that, let me know. Tweet me and or contact me on the website. Get in touch with me and let me know if that's something you're interested in. But this is just a general overview of The Mandalorian and where I think Star Wars is headed in the future. So without further ado, after these commercials, we will get the podcast started. And I want to give a quick shout out to Chip Miller, who did our new intro music for the Whitfield Report. So I'd like to thank him for doing the music. And Chip, it sounds great. So thanks for the music, buddy. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here's the premiere episode of the Whitfield Report right after these messages. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Whitfield Report, and Happy New Year to you all. Whenever you're listening to this in the past, present, future hour, or watching live on YouTube for the premiere, I want to thank you all very much for joining me for this special premiere edition of the show. As I said once before, Happy New Year, and it's great to be back. Contact info, as usual, to start off the new year. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @SamDeber_NDC, hashtag Whitfield Report. You can also follow the Whitfield Report on Twitter at Whitfield Report. I don't really tweet anything out other than show links, or podcast episodes on there. So again, follow me on Twitter at @SamDeber_NDC. You can follow me on Gab and Minds at Sam Whitfield. TheSamWhitfield.com is my website, and Facebook.com/Whitfield Report. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give the podcast a 5-star review rating, and please leave us your comments. It really helps us out. So, Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen, and Happy New Decade as well. It's 2020. And I've been podcasting for a little over a decade now, 12 years actually, come March 25th, that's my anniversary. And I'm just super excited to be able to continue to put out a show for you guys. It's been awesome so far, and I really enjoy doing the show, and I hope you guys still enjoy watching and listening to the show. Now, this is pre-recorded, so if you're expecting to catch this live, I apologize. The show will be live on Saturday. And before we get into today's show, which I will explain here in a minute, I want to just make some brief announcements. So this year, I would like to announce that I will be joined, not full-time yet, we haven't necessarily worked it out, but I will have a co-host for this show on Saturdays at the very least. Maybe not every Saturday, but as often as possible, we will be having Apex Gamma co-host the podcast, and the reason being is Apex and I just get along great. He and I have a very comfortable dialogue with each other. So he's going to be joining the show, and we're going to talk a little bit about everything. Politics, pop culture stuff, all the good stuff. And I'm sure as the election nears, we're going to be covering that as well. And so he's going to be joining me. And part of the reason for that is I do pretty well solo, but honestly, talking into the void alone in a room sometimes can be difficult, even for like seasoned podcasters such as myself. And like I said, he and I have a very good back and forth, so he will be joining me as often as we can. I still have a few technical things that I have to fix on my end regarding Skype and the audio, but I will get that fixed before Saturday's show, hopefully, and we should be on the road. So I want to make that announcement. The other announcement I'm going to make is I'm going to try to have more guests on the podcast in 2020. I don't want to announce any names yet, but I do have some confirmed guests already. I just don't know the specific dates yet, and some of these will be other YouTubers, some of these might be people in the political sphere. I've actually got a couple of independent filmmakers who are interested in coming on the podcast to promote their projects, so that should be interesting. And then, as I said before, with this being an election year, we'll probably also have some debates and some roundtables regarding the election, so that'll be pretty exciting. So that will be the Saturday show. As far as the Thursday show, that is usually audio only and for the most part, I'm going to keep it audio only. I want something, exclusive for those of you that listen on the podcast. And when I review movies, for the most part, unless I want to play a clip or something, you really don't need the visual part of it if I'm just doing commentary on a movie. Also, that might be when I have movie-related guests and whatnot. So, and also Thursday, it's not strictly related to movie. The Thursday podcast, as you know, is kind of, my version of the Bill Burr, Monday morning podcast where I just rant about stuff. And so, that it's more free form. So, Thursdays are going to be audio only, as usual. But, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever you get those podcasts. And yeah, I think for now that covers all of the announcements. Just that, as always, great to be back and great to have you here watching and or listening. Alright, folks, so now that I have the housekeeping out of the way, let's get to what you all came here for, shall we? Which is, I'm going to talk to you today about Star Wars and my review of the Rise of Skywalker, or rather the Fall of Skywalker, as some people are calling it. And I want to kind of give a review of where I think the Star Wars franchise is headed, just in general. We'll look some stuff up here regarding what Lucas kind of has and what Lucasfilm has in store. And I'm not only going to be reviewing Episode 9, I'm also going to be reviewing The Mandalorian, which I'm sure Apex and I will actually have a conversation about that a bit on Saturday, and we may disagree on some stuff there. He's not as quite a fan of The Mandalorian as I am, so that'll be interesting. But nonetheless, let's jump into Episode 9. So, spoilers ahead. Actually, before we do spoilers, I do kind of want to just give my reaction, basically, and kind of give you guys my history and what Star Wars means to me, because I'm a pretty hardcore Star Wars fan. Star Wars was actually like the first live action movie I saw as a kid. I was about 6 or so when I first saw it, and the original one, A New Hope. I saw the original theatrical version on VHS before the special editions came out. My mother had the trilogy on VHS before the special editions came along and kind of ruined the films, so to speak, just because they got so oversaturated. So I got to see Star Wars early on, uncut in all its glory. And, me being 6 years old at the time, and that being my first kind of live action, movie with, like, real people, I remember it was, from what I do remember, it was quite an experience. The first time you see Darth Vader walk through the door in A New Hope, and you see him come through the smoke-filled room, and he's black clad and armored and very scary-looking guy. I was scared of Darth Vader at 6 years old. I mean, he's a very menacing figure, so he's a menacing villain. That was one of the things that I remember caught me immediately. Obviously Luke is the idyllic farm boy, Luke Skywalker, and he's our hero. And of course you have Princess Leia, the damsel, not really a damsel in distress, but a damsel nonetheless, and Han Solo, who is the fetching smuggler. He's kind of the cowboy of the outfit. So I start out off the movie, terrified when I was 6 or so. Like, this is just what I remember. I started off the movie, terrified because of Darth Vader, but I really got into it, and by the end, I loved it. And, then I watched Empire, which was mind-blowing. The realization that Darth Vader was, Luke Skywalker's father. Like, at that point when I watched it, I think it was 99 or something like that. So, and like I said, I was like 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, so I wasn't on the internet. And even back then, like, there wasn't like a huge, uh, you know, there wasn't a whole big internet culture. So a lot of kids my age and a lot of millennials who, saw Star Wars in theatrical release order, I think we were really the last generation to have that, secret revealed to us and have it be mind blowing in its totality. Great twist. In Return of the Jedi was the epic conclusion. You get to see that Darth Vader is really the big bad. This, Darth Sidious guy is, Emperor Palpatine. And you get to see Darth Vader's ultimate redemption and, the turn back to the light. And so, and this is all stuff that we know, now, obviously. But the reason I repeat all this is Star Wars was, a large part of my childhood, and just very wondrous and magical for me. The original trilogy is. I remember after that, my parents actually took me to see The Phantom Menace, which I think was in theaters at the time. And, again, Darth Maul, big, scary, alien-looking dude with horns on his head, terrified the crap out of me at the time. He was, menacing, but, we had Ewan McGregor as a young Obi-Wan Kenobi who, was kind of like one of the first actors who I really, paid attention to. Like, I wanted to know what his name was in, real life, and that's kind of how I got to, like, learning about movies behind the scenes from an early age, too, is, my dad would kind of explain to me how, those movies were made, and we watched behind the scenes stuff, and, whatnot. So, episode 1 in the theaters, I like The Phantom Menace, actually, and I know a lot of people hate it and dislike it, and yeah, it has flaws in it, but it was my first Star Wars movie in theaters, and I've seen that movie like 15 or 16 times. I still like to watch it. One thing you can't deny is, the Duel of the Fates and, that soundtrack and, that ending lightsaber battle is really cool. Episode 2 came out when I was like in second grade. That was like a few years, later. There was like a big gap between episode 1 and, episode 2 coming out, and then there was like another like 4 or 5 year gap between episode 3 and Star Wars episode 3 that came out like in 2005, I think, May 19th. I do remember that because I do remember the release date because like we had a big countdown, to what that day was in my house. And also, episode 3 is pretty significant in my life because the year before that movie came out, my parents had gone through a pretty nasty divorce. And they weren't getting along real well, at that point because the divorce was pretty fresh. But I had asked for them both to take me to see Star Wars opening day. And, even though they weren't getting along real well at the time, they did. And, I have to admit, looking back on it, I kind of get emotional a little bit thinking about it because, like I said, they weren't getting along real well, but they were able to put aside their differences and their bickering, and we were kind of able to go, to see Star Wars as a, quote unquote family, for the last time, which, really meant a lot to me. So I bring all of that up just to say that, Star Wars, it means a lot. It means a lot to me, kind of, in my personal life. It's one of the reasons I love, film and cinema as a whole. And, they're not perfect, but, they're pretty, it created the foundation of my childhood, growing up, and it inspired me to use my imagination. And, I also made a ton of friends with, Star Wars nerds and, enthusiasts, my classmates, at school. We would all, read the Star Wars comic books in the expanded universe. Knights of the Old Republic came out, that game. A lot of us played that and got into the whole expanded universe. Comic books, video games. I remember growing up when I was in, Cub Scouts and then later on in Boy Scouts, my Boy Scout troop and we would get together at each other's, houses, and we would play the original Battlefront, on not the crappy, PS4 version of Battlefront, but, the original, old school Battlefront for the PS2 when it was still good, and Battlefront 2, and, my God, we used to spend hours, playing Battlefield, or Battlefront, I should say. And when Revenge of the Sith, when Revenge of the Sith came out, I almost said Revenge of the Sith, but no, that came out much later. But when Revenge of the Sith came out, it was a big deal, for my peers and I, because we all figured at that point that Revenge of the Sith was the last Star Wars movie. That was it. George Lucas told the story that he wanted to tell in reverse chronological order, and we were okay with that. We had the EU, the expanded universe, and it was good. So going forward, kind of fast forwarding to my senior year of high school, actually 2012, to 2013. That's when I graduated. Late 2012, we get the announcement that George Lucas has sold Lucasfilm to Disney. That's the big announcement, and we're going to be getting Episode 7, in 2015. Now, there were a lot of people at the time who were skeptical of the Disney buy, and maybe they were right in hindsight. I'm willing to admit that. But I was hyped that they were going to be making, an episode 7, 8, and 9. I thought maybe they were going to borrow a lot from the, EU movies out there, that we were going to get the, the story of Luke and his new Jedi Order. I knew obviously that they would have to, scrap some of what the EU had, put out there in terms of like the books and whatnot. But by and large, I was excited, as I think a lot of people were. And actually, once The Force Awakens was announced, I actually got excited. And a lot of people don't remember this, but there was actually a whole "In JJ We Trust" thing on the internet in 2014 and 2015. People were actually legit excited about this. Let me try and actually go to YouTube and find this, for you guys, because it was a real thing. People were actually excited that J.J. Abrams was going to helm The Force Awakens. This will come into play here later, as I explain. So, bear with me. Also, I'm holding the mic because I find that the audio levels, at least on the video version, are a lot better when I do that. So, anyway, let's go here, shall we? Let me open a new tab. YouTube. Obviously, I'm not displaying my screen yet, but this will become clear in a sec. Okay, in JJ we trust. Okay, so back in, let's see when the date in this. So there was a channel. So there was a channel that I used to subscribe to, and I think I still do subscribe to this channel. There was a channel on YouTube called Hello Greedo, and back on August 22nd of 2013. So 6 years ago, he posted a video called "In JJ We Trust," and it kind of started a whole movement over the hype over the new Star Wars movies. So I want to go ahead and play this for you just to demonstrate that there really was hype for the the new trilogy at the time. So let me switch over here and go full screen. Okay, so this is "In JJ We Trust." Roll the video.
When I first heard that 3 new Star Wars movies were going to be made, I said, oh shit, here we go again with disappointment. But when the news came out that J.J. Abrams was going to be the director, I thought, wow, they're really taking this serious. Wow, I'm 100% on board. Wow, this could actually be fucking amazing. Star Wars is in good hands, great hands, the best hands, in my humble opinion, that the franchise could be in. J.J. Abrams is the man for the job. The only reason anyone would ever doubt that is because they don't know a thing about him. They just think of seeing the movie poster say, "From the director of Star Trek comes Star Wars." Yeah, that's funny, but who cares? The guy is a bona fide genius director. He makes amazingly fun films, and Mystery Box, come on. Mystery Box. Abrams understands what made the original trilogy so great, so memorable, so deep and beloved by millions around the globe. Sadly, though he provided the initial...
Well, looking back here now in 2020, with all due respect to Hello Greedo, who I'm not taking any shots at, by the way. I respect him as a YouTuber, but looking back, I'm not so sure that was the case. Looking back in hindsight, that JJ, did know what he was doing. But continuing on.
initial creative spark, George Lucas never quite understood what made his creation so special. Abrams, on the other hand, he gets it. The banter, the charm, the warmth, these are all qualities that Abrams brings to every project he directs and writes. His Star Trek reboot is perfect. I walked out of the theater in 2009 literally saying, I wish the prequels were that exciting. Mr. Abrams, on the off...
The first Star Trek movie, by the way, I will say this. The first Star Trek movie that J.J. Abrams did was and is pretty good. And I'm not a Trekkie. I do like The Next Generation, but I've always been more of a Star Wars fan. But with that being said, the first Star Trek movie is pretty good. So I understand, the basis for the excitement.
Chance that you happen to see this video, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for deciding to leap into the Star Wars universe. You, Kennedy, Kasdan, Arndt, everyone who has creative input on the project is exactly what Star Wars is in desperate need of. In JJ We Trust is a global movement made up of fans of your work, fans of Star Wars, and fans of film in general. We have full faith that your abilities, style, and heartfelt passion will be precisely what we Star Wars fans have been craving since the credits rolled in 1983 as Mark Hamill gazed out at Yoda, Alec Guinness, and Sebastian Shaw. Thank you, and may the Force be with you, Mr. Abrams. Always.
Paul Robinson, St. Kenneth, Wales. In JJ, we trust.
Okay, so then they basically go into this whole, promo video here, of In JJ We Trust, and you guys get the idea. So, it's obvious that there was, hype around this, and, it was real. People were genuinely excited about, The Force Awakens and a new trilogy at the time. And I was one of them. I thought it would be great. And, I thought, well, J.J. Abrams, he did a pretty good job with Lost. Yeah, the ending was a little confusing, but overall pretty good. Maybe we should have taken that, the confusing ending of Lost as more of a sign here. But regardless, like I said, I thought, that this was going to be a good decision by, Disney. So I wasn't really all that worried at all, to be honest. And then episode 7 came out, and I've got to be honest, folks, I liked it. I remember the big, one of the big complaints was that they played it safe, but overall I thought it was a pretty good, thing. My biggest complaint was, we didn't get enough screen time with Luke Skywalker. That was my biggest complaint. B, they gave Rey, a little bit too much, I was definitely on, the Rey is a Mary Sue train. I get that, but it didn't bother me as much then because I was hoping that they would kind of, explain it, that, maybe she had, some mystic, force power that we... I was hoping that they would explain and actually, give a valid reason, other than her being, just, amazing. And then my complaint, and this is still one of my complaints to this day, is about the character of Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren, never really seemed menacing or scary to me. As I mentioned before, when I was a kid, Darth Vader terrified me, right? Palpatine terrified me as a kid. Darth Vader, Darth Maul terrified me as a kid, right? obviously as I grew up, they weren't as, they weren't scary as I grew up and matured, but right, those villains were always, menacing, though, at least. Like, it was clear that they were the bad guys, and, that they were, legitimate threats. Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens was never really that menacing to me. He seemed like an emo kid, basically, like emo Darth Vader, and maybe in hindsight they meant that to be the case, but it really, to me, more or less seemed like they were trying to make him scared, but instead of that, they just made him like, I don't know, like a whiny goth kid who wanted to be a Darth Vader fanboy. I mean, that's honestly all I can think, really, as far as Kylo Ren goes. Overall, though, I was satisfied with, episode 7. When episode 8 was announced and they announced that Rian Johnson was going to be director, I wasn't, honestly, I didn't know who Rian Johnson really was when, I heard he was taking over for episode 8. I didn't know who he was, and I hadn't heard of his name. But the fact they were changing directors, from JJ to Rian Johnson made me nervous, because I was kind of like, well, JJ's an established guy. He did a great job with The Force Awakens. So who's this guy, and what is he going to do? And obviously, I don't want to focus too much on The Last Jedi, because I think people have skewered that movie, enough. It's whenever you criticize the Last Jedi now, it's almost like beating a dead horse. But suffice it to say, what I was initially like kind of expecting in my head for The Last Jedi was way different from the reality. Have you guys ever done the thing where like you envision what a sequel to a movie might be? Where you kind of play out like a potential sequel in your head for a movie. I did that with the, with The Last Jedi, and it played out way differently than what I was expecting. For instance, I wasn't expecting Luke to be gung-ho, about going back with Rey, right? I was kind of expecting that, like, at first he would be initially hesitant to go back, and that they would dive into that, which they did in The Last Jedi, but, like, I wasn't expecting emo Luke Skywalker. Like, I was expecting it would be, like, the first act he would be mopey, and then the second act he would kind of get back, together, and we would see him like in some really cool lightsaber battles, and we would see the Luke Skywalker that we all came to know and love, and then by the third act, like, I would expect that I was kind of expecting that they might kill him off, but I was almost expecting him and Kylo Ren to be like in a huge lightsaber battle, and that, like, Kylo Ren would kill off Luke in, like, an epic lightsaber battle, but, like, Luke would go down, fighting, and it would be epic, and not really what we got, which was, him just like using the last of his energy and then like, dying on that abandoned, Jedi temple planet, like lonely and sad and depressed and milking, space emus or, whatever he was farming. Like I said, Last Jedi was a huge disappointment. And it really killed the it really killed the momentum. It really did. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I guess now would be the time I would say, spoilers are ahead. So, if spoilers aren't your thing, if you haven't seen this movie yet, I encourage you to probably fast forward about 20 minutes or so. Unless you're watching this during the live premiere, click away. But at this point, you've been warned that, spoilers are ahead. So, if you can't watch, click away and come back later. And if you really don't, if you've seen it, stick around. And, if you don't care about spoilers either, then, oh well. But, I will say this. Well, first off, let me start off by sharing with you what I thought J.J. Abrams did well, and I thought this movie did well. And it's not a lot, but I do want to start off this review of The Last Jedi kind of positive, or no, of The Rise of Skywalker positive. And so let me start off. As far as the acting goes, I've always thought that Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver and basically the whole cast and crew did really well with what they had to work with, the actors, right? Considering that they had like a really, crappy script and basically bad direction in The Last Jedi, they were only as good as the material for The Last Jedi, right? And so when they had to come back and do The Rise of Skywalker, right? The actors and actresses, they did a good job with what they were given. But what they were given wasn't that great to begin with, right? So the acting was good considering what they were forced to work with. I'll say that, seeing Harrison Ford come back and talk to Ben in that, redemptive moment, kind of, some people want to say that's just Kylo Ren's, conscience, or, did Han come back as a Force ghost? Who knows? The reality is that scene between Han and Ben, between Harrison Ford and Adam Driver, it was touching, and that was a good moment in the movie. undeniably so, in my opinion. I surprisingly enough, I do feel like JJ was able to do a good job with Kylo Ren's arc, so to speak. Like, Kylo Ren is one of the only characters, surprisingly, in this entire saga of movies out of the three that we've had that I felt like actually had a decent, arc. Again, it wasn't, perfect, but like, again, given the fact that they really messed up everything up in, The Last Jedi, JJ was able to salvage him a bit in Rise of Skywalker, right? Because, technically, he did rise up and come back as a Skywalker too, and then he ended up dying along with, Leia at the end. And by the way, that was another thing. Initially, I was pissed off that they actually brought, Carrie Fisher back and CGI'd her for episode 9. I was always kind of hoping that they would write her out of the, of the movie and kind of like write her death, on screen, with the whole title credits roll. Like that was what I was expecting they were going to do, and I thought that would be the best, for what they wanted to do with Carrie. But I guess they had footage of her, like they had filmed some scenes for episode 9 back when they filmed episode 8 as well. I don't know how that worked, but bottom line, Carrie Fisher did make an appearance, in episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Her performance was, really good. And again, rest in peace, Princess Leia. The way they dealt with Princess Leia's, death, kind of her sacrifice, it did feel moving, and I do feel it was a good send-off for the character, and in a way, it was kind of a sweet memoriam of sorts for, Carrie herself, I felt. So that was a plus in the movie. And then I liked seeing Lando Calrissian, and it was good to see, that Billy D. Williams still has that charm. But those are basically my, that's basically the end of my, compliments list for, the movie. As far as what my complaints are, where to begin? Okay. Let's start off with the fact that they brought Palpatine back, right? Even when I heard that this was happening, and even when they confirmed that Palpatine was coming back in the trailer for the Rise of Skywalker, that was one of those literal. Let me try and pull this up, because I honestly, folks, was not happy when I heard that they were bringing back Palpatine. Let me tell you. Let me see here. Darth. I don't have this on soundboard, but let's see. Okay, you guys know what I'm going to pull up. That was pretty much my reaction, ladies. And in fact, let me keep this up here for a bit. But that was pretty much my reaction to, them bringing back Emperor Palpatine. They did not need to bring Palpy back. And I love Ian McDiarmid as Emperor Palpatine. He's a great villain. I love Emperor Palpatine. Yes, I even love Emperor Palpatine and Darth Sidious in Episode 3. I get that he's super campy in that movie, but I don't care. Ian McDiarmid, that whole I am the Senate thing, it's great. He's a great villain, but them bringing Palpatine back completely defeats the purpose of Anakin's redemption in Episode 6. That is perhaps my biggest problem with this movie. Now, from what... I'm not necessarily faulting J.J. Abrams for that either. Not completely. I'm going to give J.J. Abrams the benefit of the doubt here and say that he probably, most likely, had plans to do something with the Snoke character in Episode 8. Like, I imagine that if he had done Last Jedi instead of Rian Johnson, we would have actually gotten something substantial about the Snoke character rather than the red herring that he turned out to be, right? Obviously, Rian Johnson screwed the pooch on Snoke. A lot of people feel that way. Again, I don't want to beat the last Jedi to death because plenty of people have done that, but let's be honest, it wasn't that great. With Episode 9, they could have done other things other than bring back Palpatine. Right? I wouldn't have minded, and I'm being serious on this. They could have made like a whole new, Sith character that was kind of like the Sith Emperor from the old Republic era of games. They could have used Darth, maybe they could have plucked Darth Revan out of the EU, out of the expanding universe, and used him, as like a villain, right? But them using Palpatine honestly was a slap in the face, for those of us who, grew up watching 1 through 6, or, in my case, watching, 4 through 6 and then 1, through 3 in order. Those 6 movies, episodes 1 through 6, is all about the the life story of Anakin Skywalker, his rise to become a Jedi, his fall in Episode 3, and then ultimately his redemption, in legacy in Episode 6. And like a lot of people, I was hoping, that maybe we would get Hayden Christensen to come back for, Episode 9, and we would see maybe like an epic lightsaber battle between Force Ghost, Anakin and Emperor Palpatine, right? Like, that's the one thing from the Rian Johnson, disaster of Episode 8. He made Force Ghosts able to fight or something like that. And JJ could have used that in Rise of Skywalker to bring back Anakin and like have there be like a once and for all battle. But no, the way they handled, that final battle with with Rey, like getting the life essence of all of the Jedi, of the movies, and like just defeating Palpatine, it really just no. That's all I have to say about that. Like, and I'm not one of these people that like cries Mary Sue a lot, but come on. Like, Yoda couldn't defeat Palpatine. Mace Windu couldn't defeat Palpatine. Anakin was the only one. Anakin Skywalker was the only one who, defeated Palpatine. As Darth Vader, and admittedly, that's only because Vader literally snuck up on, Palpatine and threw him down the Death Star incinerator and killed him, allegedly. And that's the other thing too, is how the hell did Palpatine survive? Right? How did he survive? That was the first thing that they should have explained in the movie. Oh, but they'll explain in the EU. They'll explain in the new expanded universe, or they'll explain in season 2 of The Mandalorian, or something like that. Okay, good. What about the people who don't, read Star Wars novels or have a Disney Plus subscription or care about The Mandalorian or anything like that? Like, this is the problem with Star Wars now, is like the expanding universe that I grew up with, they were fun books and they were fun stories, like, told through video games and, all the extra content and whatnot, but they were also completely optional, right? It was like bonus material. It was like fun added material to the Star Wars universe, but it wasn't necessary in order to understand the main plot of the 6 movies. Now Disney wants the tie-ins and whatnot, obviously. They want everything to be, connected together, in order to make money. It's obviously a money grab, and I don't mind that necessarily, but don't make it mandatory for content. Like, just have it be fun bonus content, like, the original EU was, and don't make all of the tie-ins mandatory to explain, the movies. But that's where we're at, sadly. So, so yeah, overall, I mean, and even with that opening, title sequence, I even said on Facebook, basically my biggest complaint was the whole, basically the whole story plot with them like bringing back Palpatine and the way in which they introduced him and whatnot. The whole plot seemed like a really, like badly written Star Wars fan fiction, to be honest. I don't know how else to explain it, and but honestly, like I could have. That was the level of a Star Wars story that I might have written when I was like 8 years old, 10 years old. Like I can't even remember what the exact title crawl was, but it was something like the diabolical Darth Sidious is back, Emperor Palpatine. Like the whole plot from beginning to end was just, it was badly written fan fiction, and it was a shame, but I suppose that JJ, he was doing damage control from The Last Jedi for this movie, the Rise of Skywalker, but in essence, it wasn't really the Rise of Skywalker. It was more or less the whimper of Skywalker, the end of Skywalker. So very, just overall, very disappointing. I admire the effort, but it was disappointing at the end of the day. I'm sad to say. Now, in terms of stuff that I do like, let me switch back over to the camera. So, those are my thoughts basically for episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Again, in conclusion, they did a good job with what they had, trying to salvage, from the mistake that was The Last Jedi, but it was still kind of a dismal, effort. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but it wasn't great either. Now, in terms of good Star Wars stuff, let me pull up here. It's the Mandalorian. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, boy. Okay, the Mandalorian, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's see. Open image, a new tab. Yes, that is exactly what I want. Okay, folks. Let's chat about the Mandalorian, shall we? Big surprise at how good this show is. I mentioned that before on previous podcasts, but I'll say it again. I'm really surprised with how much I like the show, and it definitely adds to the to the worthwhileness of Disney Plus. But here we are, the Mandalorian. Obviously, it's not perfect, but they did a pretty good job with creating an entirely new character. Really that we shouldn't have cared about, by all accounts and odds. And they made a really good anti-hero, with like a really compelling storyline. Basically, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni really took the Mandalorian and the whole concept of what it means to be a Mandalorian, brought it to life, gave it like an Old West, spin, and they've just run with it. And yeah, it's not perfect, but it's fun to watch. And obviously, Baby Yoda is adorable. And yeah, it's obvious that Disney is milking that for all it's worth. It's not perfect, as Apex Gamer mentioned. It's obvious that the Mandalorian's ship is, getting raided almost every episode, and he needs a car alarm on that thing, and they use that as like a plot device, constantly. I get that. That's annoying. But overall, it's been a lot more consistent than the movies. And, maybe that's part of it too. Like, The Mandalorian might not be that great, I guess one could argue, but the movies are so bad now that, The Mandalorian is, seems awesome by comparison. The stories, yeah, they've been pretty, generic kind of Western, set in space, but they're fun to watch. I will say this. Pedro Pascal, I love him as an actor. He's one of my new favorite actors. Loved him in Narcos. Loved him in Game of Thrones. I haven't seen too much of his other stuff, but my favorite role of his is in Narcos, and then I really have to admit that Pedro Pascal did a really good job in The Mandalorian. He conveys a lot of emotion, considering that he wears the helmet basically the whole entire season, except for maybe 30 seconds during one shot of the finale. But other than that, he's pretty good. As I said, the Baby Yoda, probably is cute. And I mean, I guess if there's one thing I have to really kind of complain about with The Mandalorian, it's Gina Carano, the mixed martial artist. Obviously, she and Ronda Rousey are both fighters, and they really shouldn't be acting. So she just she can't really act, and it shows. But maybe if they do bring her back for season 2, maybe she'll do a bit better. I'm certainly hoping, for that. Carl Weathers, aka Apollo Creed, is, amazing. It's cool that he's part of the Star Wars universe now, and he's amazing. Bill Burr as that one bounty hunter, as Alan Powell mentioned. Bill Burr, it was cool seeing him in The Mandalorian, especially considering that he's not a big science fiction fan, but it was cool for those of us who are not only Star Wars fans but are also Bill Burr fans and whatnot. So I think The Mandalorian was a really strong start to Disney's, Star Wars TV series, and it just goes to show that, as long as you get decent writing in there, and decent writers and decent screenplays, Disney can make good Star Wars, productions when they really set their minds to it. It just depends on who they get to basically write the material. And Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, they have the credits, and they're really doing a good job. So props to them. And I think The Mandalorian is really good. So I'm anxious to see what season 2 brings. Hopefully it will be, as good as season 1. Hopefully, if hopefully season 2 will be, good and not be The Last Jedi of, of Star Wars TV shows. That would be a shame. I'm also very excited about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that they're going to be putting out on Disney Plus. That will be exciting, and overall, I'm hoping that they continue to take the Star Wars franchise more in the direction of The Mandalorian and less in the direction of The Last Jedi and whatnot. And I'm sure that many of you guys feel the same way as well. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude this episode of the Whitfield Report. So, as I mentioned, I want to thank you all for joining me, and thank you for hanging in there with me for this review of the series. I really enjoyed chatting this with you. I understand that it was a little bit all over the place, but I appreciate you guys bearing with me, and thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and you're listening on the podcast. I will be back Saturday, 10 p.m. Eastern on the live stream, so be sure to tune in for that. Sunday, Sunday morning, if you're listening to this on the podcast, that's when the Saturday show, when the audio version gets posted of the live show, I post the audio podcast the next day of the live show, and so you will be able to listen to the Saturday show on Sunday. And so anyway, folks, as I mentioned before, thank you very much for listening. God bless, and God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy in that order, and may the Force be with you. Hey there, folks. If you've made it this far to the end of the podcast, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to the show. You are the ones that make it possible for me to make an income from podcasting, and I greatly appreciate that just by listening to our show. You are helping us gain ad revenue. However, if you would really like to help support the show, I encourage you to please donate to the podcast and become a supporter of the show. You can head over to anchor.fm/Whitfield Report and click the support this podcast button and choose the amount that suits you to support the show. Or you can click the link in the show notes and it will directly take you to that page. If you can support the podcast, I really, really appreciate that. Anything that you can do to help out is greatly appreciated. Even if you can't afford to help financially support the podcast, I encourage you to please go on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, and please leave this podcast a positive 5-star review. That really helps us out here at the Whitfield Report. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next episode.